U.S. energy and climate policy will be in sharp focus as Donald Trump begins his second term in January next year. During his victory speech, the president-elect boasted of the country's vast reserves of oil and natural gas. His campaign has already made it clear that Mr. Trump's goal in his second term will be to boost fossil fuel production. He will take office at a time when temperatures, though, are being broken across the world. Greenhouse gas emissions reached an all-time high last year. But during his first term, Donald Trump pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Although the Biden administration focused on limiting climate change, this White House has overseen record amounts of oil production. And for more, we're joined by Bob McNally. He's the founder and president of Rapidan Energy Group. He was formerly a White House energy advisor to Republican president, that was George W. Bush. He joins us from Abu Dhabi. Mr. McNally, just following the election or the election victory of Mr. Trump, we saw the prices for turbine manufacturers, stock prices dropping sharply, a bit concerns that they may lose their license to operate, or the mandate, or any incentives they might have. Is this a reflection of what is likely to come with a Trump administration?
Good to be with you. And yes, I think it is. President Trump, due to his unexpectedly large victory, and it looks like Republican control of both the House and the Senate, so full governmental control, they are going to move the country sharply back to what we call an all-of-the-above energy policy that we had under President Obama, President Bush, for whom I worked. It's not hostile to wind. It's not hostile to solar, but it won't allow for aggressive mandates for wind and solar renewables, or EVs for that matter, or subsidies, costly subsidies. We're going into a very difficult debt discussion next year, so there'll be fiscal pressure. So to the degree turbine manufacturers and renewable fuel developers and investors are betting on strong, sustained mandates and policies, that is a bad bet to have made. That's going to change. You know, we're starting to see that, though, around the world. It's not just the U.S. and Europe as well. We're starting to see a more pragmatic, balanced approach to energy and climate policy. But with President Trump winning, that is certainly a direction the U.S. is going very fast come January.
I think you mentioned the environment has changed, prompting this more mature and reasoned approach to this transition to clean energy. For example, oil prices, interest rates, general cost of living. These concerns are part of this thing that has prompted a slower transition to clean energy. So it's not necessarily hostile. It is, in fact, something we might have expected.
Precisely right. If you look at the Paris Agreement 2015 to 2021, or perhaps the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the stars were aligned to believe in net zero 2050 at low cost. Interest rates were low. Inflation was something just in the history books. No one knew it about inflation. There were no major wars. And most countries were accepting that China was going to dominate clean energy, electrified transportation, and power. But every single one of those variables, those macroeconomic and geopolitical environmental conditions, if you will, has changed for the worse. Interest rates are high. Inflation is back. We have two major wars that are roiling energy markets. And the public in the United States, Europe, and elsewhere in Asia is distracted by it. And for that reason, energy security is coming back. Energy affordability is coming back. Doesn't mean that climate change is going away. It just means that these other important issues are coming back into the discussion. So again, anybody who bet that we're going to go at any cost to decarbonize the energy system, 80% of our energy in the coming decades, at any cost, that was just a bad bet. And President Trump's victory will perhaps signal to them that they need to recalibrate.
So what used to be, I suppose, you could consider that the holy trinity of affordability, competitiveness, growth, efficiency, these things perhaps are taking second place to concerns such as national security, diversification, sustainability. These things actually are here to stay, not just in the United States, but globally.
Precisely. When we see the elections in Europe, at the European Parliament, Austria, Germany is going to have an election. Canada, their energy policy is being reconsidered. There's going to be changes there. We're seeing around the world that governments who have been, if you will, mugged by reality in recent years, wars, inflation, price shocks, import disruptions, sanctions on Russia, on Iran that have reconfigured energy flows. This has disheveled global economic stability, and it has bothered and worried publics everywhere, and they're recalibrating to it. And I think, in a way, it's unfortunate that these events have taken place, but it's inevitable. It is what it is, and I think we have to adjust. But it's not the end of the world. I think we can be optimistic. We still want to live in a cleaner environment. We want to get emissions down, but it was just kind of foolhardy to think that we would do that at the exclusion of those other issues you mentioned, such as affordability and security.
All right, this might sound vaguely combative, but could it also be foolhardy? And this is the president-elect of the United States saying, this is in July at a speech, we will drill, baby, drill, and by doing that, we will lead to a large-scale decline in prices. The idea is to end inflation by boosting production and therefore lowering energy costs. Is it as simple as that? You're talking about a broad change in the entire approach to industrial policy, to economic tools. Will drill, baby, drill be solving this problem?
Well, as someone who has worked for a president as his advisor in the White House during a period of Middle East war and high energy prices, I can tell you I have looked for the the magic wand that can suddenly lower gasoline prices, including by increasing production. And it doesn't exist, unfortunately. We need sensible policies, and the president will bring those in. We need to lease, we need to permit, we need to make it easy for the industry to react to market conditions. But the dirty little secret of energy policy, just to be honest, is that whoever is sitting in the White House really doesn't matter for how much oil is produced. A president can't suddenly increase production. It just doesn't work that way. Production in the United States has reached an all-time high in September under President Biden, who is not trying to do that necessarily. So how much oil we or any other country produces depends on the price of oil, on global oil market fundamentals, on economic risks, on financial conditions, and geopolitics. These are the factors. It's really the price that drives production and not the other way around. Unfortunately, believe me, I've looked for the magic wand. It doesn't exist.
All right, final question here. Well, what might actually be vital and crucial and will make a difference is continuity in policy. So, for example, the idea that policies, either subsidies or mandates, will be what backstop any carbon investment that you need to see, whether in fossil fuels, clean energy, without certainty in policy. People would not be putting money in. That's what we need to see, whoever is president. Final question.
That is exactly what I hear from my clients, physical producers, financial investors. It's this ping pong game. A Democratic administration comes in and rips up the old rules and regulations and puts in new ones. And then, as we'll see shortly, President Trump comes in and he's going to rip up the Biden regulation. And it's this uncertainty and volatility in regulations, which is very troubling for an industry that's making long-term investment decisions, whether it's in industry or plane manufacturers, car manufacturers. And so with total control of both houses of Congress, it's possible that the United States now will be able to enshrine in law new rules and regulations that are more aligned with a more all of the above energy policy and end this game of ping pong, which, as you correctly pointed out, investors are hoping and praying for.
Oh, thanks. Bob McNally, founder and president of Rapid Energy.